America first conservative, but to put this country first, we have to rediscover what this country is. What does it mean to be a citizen of the United States of America? To me, it means we believe in ideals like the rule of law. I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why we will use our own military to protect our own southern border and our northern border too. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. That's the heart of my domestic policy agenda in this country. Right here, a lot of people in this country will talk about, a lot of presidents will come through Iowa every 4 years or so, tell you about what they'll work with Congress to do. Forget that. That doesn't happen. Right? It's diluted out of existence by special interests. It's diluted out of existence by 500 people who can't really achieve something without actually having the sausage-making factory give us something very different than what went in. Forget that. I'm telling you what the U.S. president needs to do. Actually make sure at least the people who we elect are the ones setting policy, not the three-letter agency bureaucrats in the shadow government, the deep state, that's actually pulling the strings today. You want to drain the swamp, here's how you do it. 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats. We will get that done by the end of my first term. 50% of that will get done in the first month. That's how you drain the swamp. Get serious about that. We'll talk about exactly how. If I can't work for you for more than 8 years as your next president, which I think is a good thing, by the way, neither should those federal bureaucrats who are reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. That's how you drain the swamp. Don't start with last year's budget as the baseline and try to massage it around the edges. Start with zero as the baseline and ask what's actually necessary, zero-based budgeting. That's how I've run my businesses. That's how many CEOs run their businesses. That's how we got to run the federal government. Many of those regulations, most of them affecting businesses and individuals across this country, they weren't even passed into law by Congress. That's unconstitutional. Those regulations are null and void. We will rescind them on my first day in office. That's how we drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy again in this country, unlock this economy. This isn't controversial. This is common sense. We got to stand for what's right. Our founding fathers set this system into motion for a reason. These aren't black ideas or white ideas. These aren't even Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. They shouldn't be, at least. Now, to get there, we have a basic entitlement we're owed as Americans. That's elections that we can trust and believe in. That also is what it means to be an American. That also is what it means to live in a constitutional republic rather than an autocracy where a cabal of unelected judges in a random state can decide to disqualify a presidential candidate. You know what? I've said if they're doing that to Trump in Colorado, and I'm running this race to be your nominee, and I expect we will succeed. I think we're going to win the Iowa caucus, and I'll tell you why. But when they're doing that in Colorado, I made a pledge to say if they're going to remove Trump illegally from that ballot, I'd be removed myself too. I'll remove myself because we cannot have that level of election interference in a GOP primary, let alone what's coming next November, unless we step up and do something about it. Single day voting on Election Day as a national holiday with paper ballots, government-issued voter ID to match the voter file, and yes, English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. Again, that is not controversial. That is common sense. These are basic ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in this country in 1776. And I believe deep in my heart that those ideals still exist. I'm running for president to revive them. It's on the back of our coins, every one of them, etched into each one. It says, E pluribus unum. It means from many, one. That's what we've lost in this country. We've been taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals. Here's how we're going to get it back. It's going to be by all of us. What I said in the very beginning, every one of us, not just me, all of us starting to speak openly again. Say in public what you will say in private at the dinner table. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your neighbor enough to tell them what you actually think. That's how we get this country back. That's what this campaign is about. Speaking the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Speaking the truth, not just to the Democrats on the other side, but to our own side, right here in the Republican Party when it's necessary too. That's what I'm doing on that debate stage. Hasn't made me very popular amongst the Republican establishment, I'll tell you that. But that's okay, I don't report to them. I report to you, the people of this country. If you want somebody who's actually going to get in there and shut down the deep state and speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. There's a reason why I am the only candidate in this race, on or off that stage, that's able to tell you certain things that are true. That the carbon dioxide capture pipeline, the CO2 pipeline making its way across half the state, using eminent domain to seize your land and the land of innocent farmers, that it is unconstitutional, that it is based on a climate change agenda, that yes, I'll say it is a hoax, because it has nothing to do with the climate and everything to do with letting China catch up to the United States. The only person in this race who can definitively commit to you that I will, on day one in office, pardon any peaceful protester from that day of January 6th, because we need that for one standard of the rule of law in this country. The only person who can actually tell you the truth, that Ronna McDaniel needs to step aside after 5 failed years of leadership of this party that's become a party of losers. We're done with that. But ask yourself, why am I the only candidate who's able to say these things to you? I'm new to this, and I'll tell you, politics, it's been eye-opening. You didn't think it's going to be bad. It was far worse than I expected. I was wrong. Every politician dances to the tune of their biggest donor. It's a fact. It's like a law of nature. The sun rises in the east, the sets in the west. Every politician's a puppet. In my case, that biggest donor is me. I refuse to be somebody else's circus monkey. I am not a pawn on a chessboard. I'd rather speak the truth and lose this election than to win by playing some carefully crafted political snakes and ladders. And my bet is that'll be the winning strategy. I think we're actually going to win the Iowa caucus. I'll tell you why, because most of the people supporting us are not polled. Many of them are first-timers. Many of them are young. Some are libertarian. Others are America First patriots who haven't thought of themselves as traditional caucus-going Republicans. So I think we're going to succeed. And I think that's how we're going to win this general election in a landslide. Bring actual people. It's not black versus white or even red versus blue. Forget that. Do you agree on those 1776 ideals enshrined in that flag? If you do, then we're on the same team. And we will not stop or compromise on those principles till we get that job done. We will speak the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. The things I'm saying in this race, they're controversial, not because they're false, but because they are true, because we know them to be true. But others are afraid to say in the open that God is real, that there are two genders. So I never thought I'd have to talk about that one. That fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. That reverse racism is racism. That an open border is not a border. That parents determine the education of their children. That the nuclear family isn't a bad word. It's the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism is not something we should apologize for. It is still the best system we have to lift us up from poverty. Not crony capitalism, but the real thing. That there are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. That the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we are going to revive to save this great country. Thank you for coming out today, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. I want to open this up. I want to sit across the table from Xi Jinping. I better be ready to sit across the table from our own voters. Give me the hard ones.
Good morning. I love how you're an outsider. I love that. I don't think I will ever vote for another career politician. I can't stand them, and I think they can be bought, and that's one of the things I love about you. With that being said, when you are elected president, one of your challenges are going to be finding a good cabinet that's loyal to you, that's not entrenched in the deep state. How are you going to find those people, and how are you going to weed them out?
Yeah, so the first thing is you got to clean the deck that's already there. This is where they duped Trump, actually. And they told him things like, you can't fire those federal employees because of civil service protections. Read the law. Those civil service protections do not apply to mass layoffs. They only apply to individual employee firings. Because the logic is I can't fire you at the SEC because I disagree with your views on gun rights. But they don't apply to mass indiscriminate firings. That's why I said we're going to have mass firings, 75% across the board. Mass firings are absolutely what I'm bringing to the D.C. bureaucracy. So that's the first thing you got to do is actually got to clean house for the people who are already there. Otherwise, you strike the swamp strikes back. The next thing you got is a lot of the people we bring in, about half the people we bring in, will be people who don't come from that same environment. I mean, you can't cure cancer by using the cancer to do it. So I think this is the other place where Trump came in with an America First agenda, but you put in John Bolton to Nikki Haley to God knows who. It's hostile to your own agenda. You're not actually going to get the thing done. And so for me, anyway, one of the things we fail to do is define what America First means. Right? It's as I said before, it's bigger than one man. It doesn't belong to Trump. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you, the people of this country. So to me, it means 2 things. The people who we elect to run the government should be the ones who run the government. And the people who are actually elected to run the government owe one moral duty. It is to the citizens of this country, not any other one. I don't think that's too much to ask. 2 basic things. The people we elect actually run the government, and that they owe moral duty to the citizens of this country, not another one. That's what America First means. It's not just a costume you wear on TV, okay? And so I think that anybody who serves in the administration needs to have deep in their heart that same set of principles. I think part of what happens is you get a lot of people in that deep state. It's not that they think they're nefarious. A lot of people reported to Trump and their administration. What they believe is it's a fundamental skepticism that the people could even be trusted in the first place, right? That you can't handle the truth. Why don't they release the truth about what happened on January 6th or the Jeffrey Epstein client list or the truth about the Hunter Biden laptop story? It's not because they think they're deceiving you. If only it was that. It's that they think you can't be trusted with the truth. And that's how it's been done for most of human history. In old world Europe, the idea that the government is transparent with its own people, the idea that you get to speak your mind freely as long as I get to in return, the idea that we the people could be trusted in a republic where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally. For most of our history, it was done the other way. So we are the crazy ones in some sense. I'm proud of that. That's what makes America great. That's what makes America itself. On this side of 1776, that's how we do it. And so I think you got to see this through with the constitutional conviction that I think will take this a lot further than Trump did. That takes somebody who has two things. One is you got to be an outsider, as you said, somebody willing to break glass, sharp elbows. I bring that. Trump brought that in some measure in 2016. But it also takes an outsider who knows and understands the law and the Constitution deeply, so I won't be duped. And those two things don't usually go together, right? Because you have the academic law professor types over here. You have the business guys who can execute over here. Those two things don't usually go together. That's what called me into this race. I think it's going to take somebody with both of those skills, and it helps to have somebody with fresh legs from the next generation to see this through. So the way I view it is, and I'm grateful to him for it, Trump rolled over that log and we saw what crawled out. I'm bringing the pesticide. That's what it's going to take. That's the mass firings is what I'm talking about. And then you bring in fresh outsiders to fill those roles. That's the way we're doing this. Great question, my man. I appreciate it.
So I heard Ron DeSantis speak the other night, and I actually really liked a lot of what he said. Could you just, I heard Ron DeSantis speak the other night. I really liked a lot of what he said. Could you describe the difference between how you see the world and how he sees the world?
I think there are a lot of similarities between how we see the world. I think there's two things that are different. There's some small policy stuff here and there, but the big things that are different, I will say, number one, he's a very good executor in Florida. Not perfect, but you can always pick on something somebody's done. Monday morning quarterback, you could do that to Trump or to DeSantis. I'm not doing that. By and large, very good governor. But I think when you're talking about who's going to be the president of this nation, it's a different role than just being an executor as governor. I think you have to be able to stand for our national ideals, to revive national pride in the next generation. I mean, 60% of young Americans say they would sooner give up their right to vote than to give up their access to TikTok right now. That's where we are. Young people are lost. I think all of us, in some ways, are lost. We are hungry for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our history when the things that used to fill that void, faith in God, patriotism, belief in country, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. That leaves a black hole in our hearts. And when you have a vacuum that runs that deep, that's when the poison fills the void. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, Zelenskyism, you could go down the list. Depression, anxiety, fentanyl, suicide. My belief is these are symptoms of a deeper void. And so the difference between Ron DeSantis and me is this. And Ron, I gave him my first book the first time I wrote it, Woke Inc. And he read it thoroughly. I think he implemented or attempted to implement some of the ideas that are in there. Ron has been playing a good game of whack-a-mole. Right? You got some wokeism over here, got that down. Oh, critical race, I don't know exactly what that is, but I don't like it. We're done with that. And it's good. He's got the right ideas here, right? Transgender, nope, we're not doing that stuff here in Florida. That's good. But you're missing the point unless you, I believe at least, you're missing the point unless you realize these are just symptoms of a deeper void. And the way we ultimately win is we have to dilute that poison to irrelevance by filling the vacuum with the real thing. Right? You're not going to, you ban one thing, you got critical race, you got Schmidtical race theory. I mean, the left is always one step ahead if you're playing whack-a-mole. We got to revive civic pride, civic identity. Answer what it means to be a citizen of this nation. There's an old expression, if you have a hole the size of God in your heart and God doesn't fill it, something else will instead. Right? You don't pledge allegiance to that flag, you'll pledge allegiance to a different flag. The transgender flag, literally, you have one. Or the Ukraine flag that pops up on people's front yards who don't have the American flag up. I mean, that's what's going on. And so I think it takes a leader who can understand that, to speak to it, can reach and lead the next generation. So I prefer to defeat wokeism and everything else through reviving the ideals that that flag stands for. That's the first way I would say I'm different than Ron. The second way, and I'll pick up on that theme, is I understand something about that Constitution that I believe he doesn't. Not in a way that makes him a bad person or anything, but I think he just doesn't understand this. I've talked to him off the debate stage, and we have our disagreements about this. The beauty of this country, part of what that flag represents, is that you can go outside and burn that flag and chant death to America. That's actually the beauty of what this country was founded on. It's heinous speech, but nonetheless, you have the right to say it. And so for me, the Constitution isn't, you can't be a fair weather fan of the Constitution. There's no such thing as a fair weather fan of the First Amendment. So we'll pick a hard issue, and I don't know if 100% of you in this room will agree with me or not, and that's okay. My job is to tell you who I am and what I stand for. It's your job to decide who you want to vote for. I think it was a mistake, but it's not a one-off mistake. It's a symptom of a wrong worldview for Ron to say we would disband. He banned on the college campuses this group called Students for Justice in Palestine. I mean, this group is saying heinous and offensive things. I mean, they're wildly off base. It's offensive. I mean, what Hamas did to Israel was wrong. It was immoral. It was inhumane, medieval in the nature of the attack. But if you have a group that's chanting intifada, even saying something as heinous as death to Israel, and keep in mind they've said death to America years before, but now everyone's suddenly paying attention to it. It's interesting how that works. They have the right to say it. And we're not going to fix it by censoring that or that underbelly. And if so, here's what's going to happen. You mark my words. The next thing that happens if you question a vaccine, you're going to say you're a bioterrorist. Question whether the J6 protesters actually should be in prison or whether they should be freed, you're an insurrectionist terrorist. Concerned parent who shows up at a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist. So we cannot adopt the methods of the other side to defeat the other side. And I think that's where I'm different than Ron as well. We swear an oath to the Constitution. You better darn well know what it says. And I think that that's ultimately how we win. We dilute the poison to irrelevance, not have our own red food-colored version of the same, right? And I think that that's, a mistake that we may sometimes make in our movement. I mean, Nikki Haley, in some sense, and Ron DeSantis are on the same side of this. She thinks every social media user should have to provide their government-issued ID to use the internet in the name of national security. No, I reject that. And I don't care if it's Nikki Haley or Dick Cheney or Ron DeSantis or Joe Biden or Jack Smith who has subpoenaed anybody who retweeted or liked a Trump post in 2020. That's part of the investigation, part of the subpoena. Unbelievable. So we don't like it when the left does it, but we have to stand for our own principles or else we've lost the very thing that we're fighting for. And so that's how we win. Standing for who we are. Revive those 1776 ideals. And I ask myself, here's where I get some of my clarity as president, if you guys put me in that office. What would George Washington and Alexander Hamilton and John Jay and Thomas Jefferson say if they see what we're doing today? Would they be proud or would they be appalled? I think if they walk around our country today, they'd be appalled. But I think if they see much of what the Republican Party is doing today, they would be appalled. That's the standard that I use, and hopefully that gives you a sense for where I think I'm a little different than some of the other candidates. Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll go right behind you. So many good questions popping up. We got to go quickly.
So you talk about the Constitution being the greatest guarantor of our freedoms. What would you do to make sure that that is upheld and our freedoms are upheld in the face of something that happened in the pseudo-pandemic, where our freedoms were taken away with businesses being shut down, forced to take irrelevant vaccines, tracking of U.S. citizens? What would you do to make sure that that doesn't happen? How would you go about doing it?
The first best defense is the First Amendment. Free speech. If we had been allowed to debate those lockdowns, we wouldn't have locked down those schools or those cities. If we had been allowed to debate the merits of that vaccine, we would not have actually rolled out, let alone mandated, those vaccines. The same federal government that says on one hand you have to wait 10 years to get a new medicine, you don't even have the right to try it because it's not safe or effective, is the same one that says, oh, except for this one where you roll it out in 9 months, then you have no choice but to take it. Those things can't make sense, but we didn't have open debate. If it's been allowed to say on social media that the virus originated in a lab in Wuhan, your social media account was locked. You couldn't say it on the internet. So I think that's the first thing we got to understand. You ask about the tie to the Constitution. That's where we abandoned the Constitution. We abandon free speech in this country, and the path to truth runs through free speech and open debate in this country. That's what we missed. And the second is our autonomy. I mean, it's the Fourth Amendment. The idea that your person, effectively the same spirit at least, cannot be searched or seized, can't be seized in a different way. Your private property, the same way they can't have that eminent domain rolling across, use eminent domain to build a CO2 pipeline across your land. Same thing as the sovereignty of your own household. And so I think that reviving those, standing by those principles would have allowed me to say absolute free speech, especially in times of so-called emergency. Medical freedom is paramount. Individual choice is how we are individually sovereign. That's what's enshrined in our Constitution. And if we're to at least fix the mistakes of the past, I can't change the past. But one of the things I'll say actually that brings us full circle is at that fourth debate, I was asked the question about what do we think about those who have taken the vaccine and what justice looks like. I mean, they didn't phrase it that way, but that would be the way I would take a good version of the question. I said that they needed to strip, and as U.S. president, I would strip, the special liability exemptions for vaccine manufacturers. That's crony capitalism. Normally, if you deliver somebody a product and it harms somebody, you get to sue them in response for the harm they did, except it turns out if you're a vaccine manufacturer, you have this special shield of liability. So I said, and I commit to it, I will repeal that special shield of liability. I believe I'm the only presidential candidate in this race who's committed to do that. Then to bring this full circle, during those 4 minutes of the debate in the live stream online, including on Rumble where you could see it, it says, we will return to the program in 4 minutes. They cut that off. It's unbelievable. So you can see the video of where I said it from being there, but in the online stream, it was actually cut off. So it comes back to that circle. But what's that? That's the Constitution. They'll say, oh, no, that's not a constitutional issue because it's a private company making these censorship decisions. Not quite. It was government actors pressuring private companies, threatening private companies to censor speech that the government, and not even the government, but the deep state within the government didn't want to see rolled out. So that's the way I would lead. Stick to the Constitution. Medical freedom is paramount. Free speech is paramount. Individual sovereignty is paramount. But it goes back to the gentleman's prior question. You got to be grounded in the why in the Constitution. You can't just be reactive and playing whack-a-mole. You got to be grounded in your principles. And it's during the tough times that you're actually most tested, and that's when the Constitution matters the most. Thank you for that question. We'll come to this gentleman here.
Oh, thank you. You talk a lot about purpose and finding your purpose.
Yes.
And 26 years ago, I felt like I found my purpose to become a teacher in our high school and a coach. And over 26 years, I've loved what I've done. In recent times, it's become more and more challenging because it feels like we're being essentially attacked from both sides.
Yeah.
And when I committed to be a public school teacher, I committed to teach all kids. Regardless, like you, of my own personal religious or personal beliefs, I'm going to teach every one of them, you know, the basics of education of what we're committed to teaching. And you talk about the Department of Education.
Yes.
I believe education is the silver bullet of what we're talking about here, preparing the next generation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done what I've done. So what does that look like, and can you expand on that?
Sure. And thank you for your service. I mean, in many ways, when you think about the long-run future of the country, you're closer to the front lines than I would be even as a president, educating the next generation of young Americans and reviving that sense of civic pride and identity and achievement and self-confidence that we're missing today. Keep doing what you're doing. What grade are you teaching?
High school.
High school. So I go to the head of the snake. When you go to the problem, get to its root cause. And in this case, a big part of that root cause of the cancer in our educational system is the U.S. Department of Education. So I've said this is my purview as U.S. president. A little different than Trump here. I'm not going to put Betsy DeVos on top and say, figure it out. Get in there, shut it down, return the $80 billion budget to parents, localities, schools across this country. Allow every parent to then choose where they send their kids to school. That's how you actually have true competition in the marketplace. That's just the first step, not the final step. I think 80% of the time, especially in cities, and maybe less true where you are, but a lot of the cities in this country, if you're moving a kid from a worse performing school to a better performing school, you're moving them to a school that actually spends less money per student, which is actually staggering. So I think some of those students should be able to take some of that money with them. Many of those kids in the cities would then graduate with a six-figure graduation gift. It's not even close, which is a better use of money. And my view is transparency is part of this. If you're going to teach it in the classroom, put it on the internet. If you don't want to put it on the internet, you probably shouldn't be teaching it in the classroom. So that's at least a fair rule of thumb. If it's in the classroom, at least let the parents know what's being taught. And then I think we do need a revival of civic education in this country. I think every high school senior who graduates from high school should be able to, I would say should be required, to pass the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen of this country. I don't think that's too much to ask. You got to have skin in the game to play in that game, and we deserve an educational system that lifts those kids up to be able to do that. Now, this generated a lot of controversy from the left. They say, is this the new Jim Crow? I'm the face of white supremacy, apparently. Anybody open your eyes for a second? Doesn't really make sense. But I think it's about civic pride. And so anyway, we were actually at a pizza ranch like this a couple weeks ago, and a girl who came to that event, she was about your age. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? You're in 8th grade, so maybe 12 years old? 13? This was a 10-year-old girl, Lena Anderson was her name. She had heard about this controversy. She brought in a printout of a 100-question test and had a little handwritten note for me on it. And she showed it to me, and she says, hey, I just wanted to let you know. She said, I've been getting bullied in my class a lot, and I've been seeing them try to bully you about the civics test, and I just wanted you to know that I took this civics test, and I scored 100 out of 100, and 60% is a passing score. And if this 10-year-old girl can do it, I think every high school senior should be able to do it too. And I thought, hey, how about that? That lifted me up. And I think that's part of that sense of pride and self-confidence that I'm sure you're instilling in your kids, in the students you teach, that we're going to have to revive in this country. But let's get rid of the Federal Department of Education, get them out of it, and restore that back to localities across this country.
What about homeschooling?
Yeah, including. I mean, it's what we're starting with our kids with. So.
With that, I think a big distraction in schools and in just children's lives is cell phones, social media.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of focus on what we need to focus on.
Yes.
My 13-year-old is very upset because she still doesn't have a cell phone, and she's the
for
only
the better.
one. So you could say some words on that too.
Yes.
And how you feel just with all of that in bringing our kids up and bringing them or giving them purpose.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing your kids as well today. On the
Had the day off.
Oh, you did? Awesome. That's great. That's great. On the homeschooling point, yes, putting the $80 billion back allows parents to determine the education of their children. Private school, charter school, public school, or homeschooling should all be on that option for what we actually facilitate and support. And so that's where I'm on that. On the question about digital media as it relates to kids. So here's what I'll say. We live in a free country. Sometimes living in a free country means you're free to make the wrong choice. But kids aren't the same as adults. Right? So in the same way in the gender question, I'll say the same thing. If you're a grown adult, you're a man, you want to wear a skirt, I'm not going to stop you. We live in a free country. Now, I personally believe that that's a mental health condition and some of those people deserve compassion and help, but we're not going to stop you. But kids aren't the same as adults. So I've said in a different context, we'd ban genital mutilation, chemical castration, gender-affirming care of any kind in kids under the age of 18 because actually I've met young women on this campaign trail, some of whom have had hysterectomies. Some of them had double mastectomies who regret this in their 20s, but they did it in their teen years. So in that same spirit, just like you can't smoke an addictive cigarette by the age of 18 or get a tattoo by the age of 18 or have a drink of alcohol by the age of 21, which Reagan effectively enshrined nationally in 1984, I don't think you should be using an addictive social media product before the age of 16 either. Kids aren't the same as adults. And so yes, do I respect liberty for adults? Yes, I do. But I would favor a hard ban on the use of any AI-mediated product or social media for kids under the age of 16. That's not a Democrat idea or a Republican idea. It's about protecting our children in the next generation. These algorithms, they're designed to prey on our psychic insecurities, to get on us to click on something a little faster than the other way around. Even for adults, that's the way it works. Now, we have to fill that vacuum by reviving the things that ground us from faith to family to otherwise. But for kids, that's a wide open blank slate. And I think that's dangerous for the psychic fortitude of kids going forward. And so I think that's an easy decision. Any algorithmically powered social media, ban kids under the age of 16. As an adult, you're free to decide what you want to do. And the other thing I would say is cell phone usage in schools, take it out. Put it in the locker as soon as you come in. Get it out of the locker, out of you leave. Probably not folks like yourself, but a lot of poorly funded, poorly run inner city schools, it becomes a tool for the teachers to just get through the day. That has to end. And I think that this is our most valuable national asset. It's our kids, the next generation. I say this as a father of 2 sons myself. That's something that we will be able to do, and I think we'll address a lot of this mental health epidemic of anxiety and depression spreading like wildfire across the country. That's when young people turn to toxic ideologies to substitute for that hunger that they have, that inner hunger for purpose and meaning. Yes, we've got to fill it with the real thing, but we've also got to stop them from being, I would say, exploited by many of the algorithmic and AI-driven modalities that are designed to prey on those insecurities. That's the answer to your question. Thank you. Last question. Oh, yeah, so many. Okay, we'll go right there, and then I'll give you the final word.
All right.
We'll go take 2 more.
So conservatives get criticized all the time that they're going to cut Social Security, and obviously in the Iowa caucuses you're bringing in younger folks, but there's
Yes.
still going to be a lot of older folks that
Yeah.
go to caucus night. Can you allay any fears that folks in their 50s, 60s, 70s are that Vivek is going to cut their Social Security and give us more of a positive
Sure.
vision for the future on saving it?
Absolutely. So I can't give you comfort from other Republicans. But because I think much of the Republican Party is basically chomping at the bit to cut Social Security and veterans benefits while shipping off $200 billion of our own money to Ukraine so some kleptocrat can buy a bigger house. That's America Last policy in a nutshell, and most of the Republican Party embraces it. But here's what I can say. I think this is our last window, and I'm confident I will do it, to be able to fight our national debt without touching Social Security or Medicare. Here's how. Very practical plan. I'll get to brass tacks. I'm very familiar with the history of how we got to where we are. If the interest payments on our national debt become the largest line item on our federal budget, then we're toast. Then we're in quicksand. And there will be no option other than to go bankrupt or to make some cuts. And that's where that's happening about 5 years from now. So part of what drives me is my sense of urgency to understand this is our last window to get this right. Here's how we do it. Get the oil and natural gas out of our ground, sell as much of it as possible, and buy down $7 to $8 trillion of our national debt instantly. It'd be the first thing that I do. Second thing is, $7 trillion of our national debt was due to 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that didn't advance our interests. The Taliban is still in charge in Afghanistan 20 years later, for God's sake. Iraq is a more broken country than we showed up. Don't repeat those same mistakes in Ukraine. Then that 75% reduction in the federal employee headcount and the federal bureaucracy, that's how you get this done. Now our national debt's under control without touching Social Security and Medicare. And let me give you some more confidence on how I think about this. You said forward-looking positive vision. Fine, let me give you one more thing. I don't often bring this up, but it's actually something that I am confident we can get done. What if instead of having a conversation about reducing Social Security benefits, what if I told you we were focused instead on asking how do we increase Social Security benefits without even increasing the national debt? Right now, many people aren't able to live on their Social Security because inflation has actually far outpaced the growth in the Social Security benefits that people are earning. And I think that's fundamentally unfair for people who have paid into it. What if I told you there was a way to increase it? Well, I can avoid cuts for the people who are on it now, but for the next generation, we can deliver those increases. Here's how. 40 years ago, if the Social Security Trust Fund had been invested in the same way your financial advisor would tell you to invest a diversified portfolio of your stocks and bonds and treasuries, the average person collecting $1,800 per month in Social Security right now would be collecting close to $18,000 per month right now. Imagine that $18,000 a month check now coming in. That is government malpractice of the highest order. So I can't fix that for the current generation, but we can for the next. People my age, by the time they're collecting Social Security, will be getting that $18,000 number just because we execute it in a more intelligent manner than, frankly, the career politicians of yesterday that could have cared less because they're long gone by the time the people are actually left to bear the consequences. So hopefully that gives you some confidence that this is actually a topic I know a lot about, have been deep in, but if that's the summary punchline, it gives you confidence that, yes, we will fight our national debt with a clear deliverable plan, selling oil and gas that are underneath our own ground to instantly buy down $7 trillion of our national debt. We have that under control without touching Social Security benefits other than for the next generation to actually increase them. That's the way I think about it. And I think that it's a good example of why we don't have to be this nation that's in decline, fighting over a shrinking pie. Why don't we just think about how we might actually even achieve growing that pie as the actual answer? Economic growth doesn't have to be a tired old concept from yesterday that we relegate to the dustbin of history. Let's bring that back in this country. And I'm confident by the end of my first term, we'll be back at 5% plus GDP growth in this country. And you know what? People are going to be more proud of a country when they're making more money in that country as well. And I know how to deliver that. Thank you. Well, young man, we'll give you the final word.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you about inflation. I know you've been arguing about bringing inflation down and stabilizing the U.S. dollar, but you've also been highly critical of the high interest rates. So I ask you, how do you plan to stabilize the dollar while not raising or even dropping interest rates?
Yeah, so this relates to broader reform of the Fed. Proud of you for asking a smart question.
Thank you.
So what's going on in the economy right now is prices are going up, interest rates are going up, supposedly to fight the high prices, but wages have remained flat. So the right answer is, again, what's actually driving the inflation was a constriction on the supply of everything. The supply of energy, as we said, drill, frack, burn coal, use nuclear, get the oil and gas from out of the ground. Not only do you pay down your national debt that way, you bring down inflation that way. We're paying people more money to stay at home instead of go to work. That creates a supply chain shortage where there's a worker shortage in this country. Housing restrictions for construction of new homes, land use restrictions. So that's actually what drove inflation. Now we're penalizing people with a double whammy by raising interest rates to do it. So I think the right answer is increase the supply of everything that we're missing. Energy, housing, food, labor. Government policies created this constriction. You can reverse those government policies. Then you don't need to necessarily play the game of financial God that the Federal Reserve is trying to play. And in the longer run, and for me that's measured still within my first term, we'll put the Fed back in its place by restoring a single mandate for the U.S. Fed. Stabilize the dollar as a unit of measurement. Peg it to gold, silver, nickel, agricultural and farm commodities. We had our greatest GDP growth in this country when we were actually back on the gold standard. So when the Federal Reserve is trying to play God from on high, it's like they're trying to hit two targets with one arrow, inflation and unemployment. They're missing on both. I don't need 23,000 employees at the U.S. Fed to do that. 90% headcount reduction within the first year at the Federal Reserve. One mandate, stabilize the dollar. That's how we keep the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. That's how we stop the rise of BRICS, a gold-pegged currency that otherwise Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are trying to create as a competitor alternative to the U.S. dollar. And this is my formula in the administrative state more generally. Brings me back to the earliest theme. What was one thing I will do as your U.S. president? We will shut down the deep state and that shadow government. When you have a bunch of people showing up to work who should have never had that job in the first place, the problem is they start finding things to do. I mean, really. That's the real cost. That's where the central bank digital currency comes from, for those of you who may be familiar with that issue. We'll put the kibosh on that. The Federal Reserve should not be creating a mechanism to be able to wait till the next pandemic. If they actually have digital dollars in your bank account, they'll do exactly what they did to the Canadian truckers, which is shut off access to their bank accounts. We did an event with the truckers last night at Iowa 80 at Walcott, which is the largest truck stop in the world. This is what we talked about. But a lot of this comes back to the administrative state, even the U.S. Federal Reserve. And that's one of my rules of thumb. If I give you one piece of advice to all of you, but especially to a young, thoughtful person, is the more boring it sounds, ESG, CBDC, whatever, the more boring it sounds, the more you have to pay attention to it. It's designed to bore you into submission for a reason. That's actually one of the lessons from our loss of freedoms during the COVID pandemic as well. Disguise a political agenda as technocracy, lull them into submission. No, it takes a president who understands the essence of what's actually happening to cut through that. And if we do, and I think this is our last chance to do this, I don't think we're working with a lot of time as a country. If my kids, my older son, he's about to be 4 years old, if he's in high school before we get this right, I don't think we have a country left. I don't think we're working with a lot of time here. But I think this is our last window for me to tell you this. We don't have to be that nation in decline. We don't have to be ancient Rome at the end of the Roman Empire fighting over the scraps of a shrinking pie. I think as a nation right now, we are really just a little young, actually. Going through our own version of adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, at least for me, it makes sense again, actually. You go through your adolescence, you go through that identity crisis. You lose your way a little bit. You do some stupid things. Most of us probably did. But we are stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. So no, I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. I think we still can be a nation in our ascent. Maybe even the early stages of our ascent. The way I see it, maybe we're not even at base camp. On our way still to that shining city on a hill. That country where we will look our kids in the eye and mean it. Kids know when you're lying to them. Look them in the eye and mean it when we say that the United States of America is still the nation where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, that you get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help, that is what we're going to revive to save this country. And I am here to ask you for your help in that. The system isn't set up for a guy like me to do this. The Republican establishment does not approve of this message. I'll tell you that. And neither does the media or anybody else, but it's not their job. It's not their role. That decision belongs to you. Every one of your voices, your votes at the Iowa caucus, it counts as the equivalent of 1 million people who are showing up and having an impact on the actual result of who becomes the president because Iowa goes first. So I'm asking you for a donation, really. Not of your money, but a far more valuable donation, a donation of your time and your energy and your effort. 30 minutes of your time on January 15th to save this country. 30 minutes of your time, if you can, every week between now and then, to tell the people in this community what we talked about. There are many people in this community who aren't in this room. I'm going to ask you to share with them what we talked about. If you can bring 100 of them to come to the Iowa caucus too, I think we're going to save this country. And so, yes, if you all do your part, I promise you, my family and I, my wife Apurva and I, we will do ours to make sure, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, make sure that our country's best days are actually still ahead of us. Thank you for coming today, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We're actually from Ohio. We're from
You are?
Powell.
Oh, good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you.
He goes to Wellington.
Oh, hey, good to see you, man.
Nice to meet you.
You're from Ohio or you're visiting?
Visiting.
Oh, nice.
Our in-laws live back
Thanks,
here.
guys. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we're close to our neighborhood.
Hey, thanks
I appreciate it. Thank you for coming out, man. Thank you.
Hi,
Hey.
great to meet you.
good to meet
Retired
you.
aerospace engineer.
You are?
Yeah.
Just like my dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, space program.
That's right. That's right. He really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
My
absolutely.
diplomat.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Got it?
Thank you. What's your name?
Christy.
Christy,
Great
I
to
appreciate
meet
your
you.
question. Great to meet you.
My husband and I saw you in West Des Moines at Wellman.
Oh,
so
hey,
we
good
came
to
out
see you again. Yeah, thank you. I felt like I had seen you.
Sue
Yeah, you
and
look
Mike,
familiar.
yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for
so
being
much.
here. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
you're
A picture. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your message.
Thank you,
Appreciate your work.
Appreciate that, sir.
Helping you however I can.
Thank you.
Need
Means a
another
lot.
job if you need another help.
What's that?
I said I'm needing a job if you need more help.
Okay. Thank you.
All
Well, we can right now use the message and spreading in this community.
Yep.
It means a lot to us.
I recorded, audio recorded. I'll put that out.
Okay, that's
Love
awesome.
your message.
That's great. How we doing? Good. Good to go right now? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. For
Thank you,
coming.
man. I appreciate
Secure
that.
that southern border.
We will.
Send the bad apples back.
We will. Oh, I didn't say that today. 100% mass deportation. That's the right answer. Good seeing you.
Take care. Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Let's get a quick one. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for what you're
guys.
doing. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, guys. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's an honor to be here, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
Lincoln
you.
dinner.
It was an honor. Oh, good.
Dinner, so very good.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Thank you for doing what you
taking my
do.
question.
We just scratched the surface, but the spirit.
You got to keep teachers in the profession too.
Exactly. I think pay needs to be up for teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think compensations and undercompensation is a big problem, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you
where, if
so
I wasn't
much.
clear, that's where the $80 billion, that's part of, when I say local schools and municipalities, that's part of where you have retention too.
That's the
So thank
hardest
you.
thing in the last
I know it
year,
is.
seeing
I know it
teachers
is.
walk away, they're great.
I know it is. It's not even the shortage of the numbers, it's the retention.
Yes.
Yeah, so we understand that. Thank you. Yes.
Full disclosure,
What's that?
I'm
Oh, I'm good. I'm
sweating
good.
right
Thank
now.
you.
Full disclosure, I'm caucusing for Trump.
Okay.
I really
Don't-
like you.
Keep an open
okay?
mind. That's all I would say.
I
love
always-
Trump, but yeah.
And I love you too. But
Yeah.
are you really going to take your name off the primaries in Colorado?
If they keep him off, I'll take my name off. That's what I said.
I'm looking you
If
straight
they keep
in
him
the
off.
eye.
Yes, if they keep him off, I made a commitment.
Good
I don't
for
make
you.
commitments that I don't keep, all right?
Okay.
Because that's you got to
for
stand
you.
for what's right. It's not about me and it's not about Trump. It's about this country. We got to have elections in this
Exactly.
future. That's what it is.
And I agree.
It's
with
about
you.
this country.
They
You have my
can't
word on that.
decide who we vote for.
That's right. That's election interference, and we can't stand for it.
Okay, good.
So I'm in this for the
You
country.
gave me faith there.
Yeah. You have my word on that.
Okay,
And
thank
any
you.
other state that does it, we're going to do the same thing.
Okay.
And I'm going to require that every Republican does it too.
I can't.
Thank you. Can we get a picture?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, let's do it. Thank you. Socialism. I like that.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Come out on January 15th,
Look
guys.
forward to seeing you
Spread the
again. Thank
message.
you.
Good
Thank
to
you
see you
so
guys.
much.
What did you mean on social media when you said that they're not going to, they're going to take Biden out and it's not going to be Newsom? Or it's not
Oh,
going to be,
this is a longer story. It takes a dark turn, but I think it's. I know. I mean, I have a good sense of what's going to happen here.
okay.
They're leading into a trap. They're not going to let Trump get anywhere near the White House. They're not going to let him.
What about
So the goal is, have him be the nominee, and by hell or high water, one way or another, they're not going to have him. They're not going to let him.
what about the other two though?
It's not them.
Who is it?
It's within our own party.
Okay. It's within our own party.
Yes, it is.
Hey.
Look at the people who voted to keep Trump off the ballot. Who are they putting up? Who are lawsuits to keep him off the ballot? Larry Fink to Reid Hoffman. Who are they propping up? So it's a game. And I'm not going to, I'm in this to make sure that doesn't happen. But they want it to be a two-horse race, eliminate him, put up actually the Trojan horse within the Republican Party that keeps the war machine humming and keeps the restrictions on speech and the censorship agenda. Get it done. Who needs Democrats when you can get it done through the Republican Party?
Okay.
So you do the math.
Okay.
You do the math on that. That's what's coming.
Hey, thanks again for taking
Think
my
about it.
question.
Yeah.
Really appreciate
I
it.
appreciate you.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate your candor.
Thank you. Yeah, we're not going to touch Social Security or Medicare. Yeah, I appreciate that. Other than to increase benefits by actually
Sounds good.
using economic growth to get there, right?
Yeah.
That's America first, not America last. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's do this. Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Are you able to take it? Oh, great.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
we
girls.
appreciate you guys coming out
For
Thank
their
you, guys.
day off.
Come on, guys. Thank you.
So, yeah, I already filled out a card.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate
Great.
it.
Yeah.
You spread the message and come on January 15th.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you very much, guys.
Sir, I'd like to say,
Oh, thank you, sir.
I'd like to see the ACLU defunded.
Yes,
And-
well,
and
the federal government shouldn't be funding them anyway.
Yeah, right. And I'd like to see the Ivy League schools defunded.
Well, the federal government should not be funding
Right.
these, propping up any of these universities, really.
Yes.
And that's part of what contributes to the high cost of college education.
Yes.
Get them back to their own purpose, thin the fat. We don't need woke Four Seasons resorts, which is what they're trying to
Exactly,
subsidize. We need
yeah.
actually education. Some people should get 2-year and 1-year degrees more than they are today, too.
Yes.
So I appreciate it. Thank you for your service. You serving the
36 years.
36 years? Okay. Thank you very much for serving for your service, man.
Thank you for answering my
Hey,
question.
thank you. I appreciate you being a thoughtful young man asking a smart economic question. How old are you?
I'm 15.
You're 15? We're proud of you, man.
Thank
what
you.
about you, sir?
19.
Good to see you. You can come out to the
This
caucus.
will be my first election.
Amazing. Well, sign up with us, and we're going to make that happen. So, thank you, guys. I appreciate
you.
it. Thank you, guys. It's an honor.
I'm
Thank
a
you,
little
guys.
older than that.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So you're going to photo real fast, Vivek?
So on the way out, yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, here.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
I came all
Take
the way
care.
from California.
Take care.
California.